We have Carlos Lopez here. He is a Microsoft MVP on the data platform and a SQL expert, and he is here to talk to us about doing database development on WSL. With that, take it away, Carlos.
Thank you very much for having me today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's a great honor to be here with you. Just to, with that little introduction, I won't lose more time on that. So my name is Carlos Lopez. I'm Microsoft MVP for Data Platform. These are my networks, social networks, sorry. My experience on database, RDBMS and NoSQL there. And also, I'm a Linux fan for several distributions and some time now, especially on Ubuntu. But yeah, that's my experience. And I'm also part of the Guatemala SQL Server user group board member, and I'm a sometimes blogger and speaker as now. So that is my QR code, and chat if you like. There you can find me there. So today we will start real quick with WSL2 insights. What is it and the features and the performance facts and history about it and the benchmarking that I could find on it. And it's really interesting. So it really attracts me, this product, so in particular, especially on databases. And the third point is to prepare your environment using preparing your environment to configure to SQL, to use it for Microsoft SQL Server, for containers environment, and the third and the fourth is a scenario for a demo, the checking the environments, the tools, the tooling, and the database itself. So that's what I'll be talking about today, and we'll start right away. So what is it? Well, it's a Windows subsystem for Linux version 2, right? So that's what all know right now. So with that, we have seen that a complete new subsystem over Windows now in several distributions on Microsoft Store, and now allowing to execute Bash shells and script transparently. The full install with the subsystem for GNU and Linux, execute RPMs. That's great for us. GNU for the Windows world to integrate with the Linux. That's excellent. So what else can we do there? Execute binaries, and the performance of file systems is great. As we know, that's the main difference between the version 2 and 1, right? And the compatibility between the kernel and the Windows kernel. So the system calls is efficiently is better, so it works great. So the performance facts and history that I could find regarding to the databases. So the product has tested on the Open Benchmarking tool, and for related to the overall test, we can see the difference between the WSL 1 and 2 and the Ubuntu bare metal. So we can see the difference between it, and it has been an improvement. In the particular point of view of RDBMS, it has been tested on SQLite, which is an open source for database, and we can see the differences, and it's real great. That's the one main reasons to give it a try for RDBMSs, and also for NoSQL, it was tested on Redis, so we can see the difference for responses for it. So it's great. So what is preparing your environment for configuring the SQL for the SQL Server world? So what you need to do to configure the WSL2, you need a Windows 10 version. But now you can do you can use it on Windows Home, and that's great. That just had happened for I think less than 2 weeks. Utilize the deployment image means servicing and management tool, and to enable the feature and to set it on. And then, well, in this particular point of view, for SQL World, it is best designed to use it on Docker, on containers, since the scenario is for utilizing your subsystem or your subsystem Linux on the container world. So it is designed for it. And this is the way. The third part is to set it on the version 2, and then you need to restart it, and it will be as it shows on the screen. And what is the fact or difference between using containers and not in containers? Well, the pros is that you can containerize your environment, use a microservice technology, which is a cool technology, and what everyone is doing right now. And it's approaching you to the DevOps culture and searching you for the cloud, to do your code to the cloud. And not as a cons, but you need to invest more time specializing. I mean, your knowledge. Opposing in terms of, in case you have your experience on standalones and you installing on Windows for SQL Server, that is, you need to specialize more, and there will be a little bit of complexity on the layers. I mean, you have a new layer there, which is the WSL, and then you have the Docker one and the SQL one. So you have your layers and DOS guest, obviously, but the standalone doesn't need that, but gives you it's like scenario where you have to think on losing or decouple it or couple it solution, depending on what you're looking for. But there are more pros than cons on depending on what you're doing, of course. And why you need to think on Docker is that is this screenshot came from a perspective that is coming in some questions that I have been seeing around, where people say, well, let's use the WSL2 and put the SQL Server there, and that's it, like a standalone. That will be using the SQL Server on Linux 2017 or version to put it there. And what happened is, it happens that there is an issue because in WSL2 you don't have the you have to force the system D, which is necessary to make it run, and so you will need to do some additional steps and grant permissions to the put the adequate run level and grant permissions to the binaries. And by doing so, you are not like supported. This is not the Microsoft supported way. So you can do it. Yes, you can. But this is more. It provides you more problems than it can solve, because if you do this, you will only have the SQL Server installed on your machine, but you won't have Dockerized or containerized environment, sorry, and you lose the sense. So if you wanted to do that, it's best to keep on Windows and install it, the SQL Server on Windows. So it's less complicated than that. So what can we do with that? So it is best designed to install your distribution for the particular one, this particular scenario for Ubuntu LTS 20.04, to set Docker using on SQL Server and install your containers. So that's how ideally we will work on. And to prepare for your SQL, this is more like some hints that you can use. You can define your SQL containers on a Docker file. That's a good practice because you can have a more organized way your code. and your layers. Always create volumes dedicated for SQL container for your data, exclusively for that. So in that way, you know that you're not using the default paths that the containers has, because in that way, you know, you personalize your data, and more importantly, you can administrate better. And in that way, you know what's happening, right? Every time. And this is particularly is very important for everything, I think. Build and test your Docker container SQL image, personalized image. That's very important advice. And the fourth will be to configure a Git repository. That's like more the approachable way that you can create, or your scenario that you can create on your machine, to ideally configure your Git repository to somewhere. And to run your image as a container, obviously, as all the that we have been discussing right now. And finally, use your cloud to pull your container to repository. In this particular case, you can use ACI, right? The Azure Container Instance, to put there your images in and put your containers there. So that'll be like a good scenario with a good practice, with more DevOps prepared way to work, and especially with SQL, right? So what tools can let you do this are the Visual Studio Code, as we see in previous presentation, but in this particular case for Windows, using the Visual Studio Code WSL2 extension. You'll see it in a minute. The second part is to use the SQL Server VSE extension to connect to the SQL Server to administrate your databases itself. And using the Azure CLI tools, you can administrate your Azure from the VS Code. You can use the Docker extension for VSE also. And these are the classical and other tools that can help to visualize your data in other ways. So altogether helps you to have the complete overview of all your layers, and gives you the mastery of all that you're having there. And the more importantly or interesting part of it is that you virtually don't need to move around your IDE. Practically, you can use it all from the Visual Studio Code. So that's great because you have the terminal there. And with that, we can pull around to the terminal. We can move to the demo and see what's coming. First, I would like to show that in order to open the Visual Studio Code, you can use the Windows terminal. In this case, I'm using it with the full PowerShell to show you that you can do it by this way, and to set it remotely with your default WSL Ubuntu version. In this particular case, because I'm setting all to Ubuntu, but you can use whatever distribution you have in your WSL, your Alpine, your Kali, and everything you have, you can set it there. So with that, this will open your VS Code and set it with the particular distribution that you have. So all the environment is set on Linux there. So with that, you can manage your terminal, and you can see it. You are directly connected to the terminal on distribution you have. And the other point is, as we said, that you have to connect to your Docker administration with the integration with the WSL, with the particular distribution that you are using. It is all is set for Ubuntu for this particular demo. So with that, we have covered this particular code that we have seen, and we move to the other part, which is there you can pull the Docker image that you like. In this particular case, I have my Docker images for SQL Server are the 2019 and the 2017 versions. I have three. So with that, you can define it on your Docker run. If you are directly creating with your Docker run, I have created three particular ways to do it. This is a simple way to use a volume option, uh, uh, routing from the host from Windows to guest Windows to host Linux. Oh, but this was the traditional way to do it priorly. But now you can choose to use mount and create share folders for it. So in this particular case, or for this container, I have created with the mount SQL. And for that, I have already running it. Let me check on. Let's see. I think it's on. Yeah, I think it's up for 3 hours now, since all the tests that I was doing. So as we were discussing, you can see your Docker in a GUI way with your particular ways to do it. This can show you your registry. In my particular case, this is my registry for the ACI for Azure, and my volumes for this particular scenario. And you can control your images and all you have there. So you can have better eyes, or 4 eyes. You can see it in a visual way, or you can do it by code. Doesn't matter. The other way, the other features that always helps you to control your WSL connections, your databases. You can control it. You can control your database there. This is the extension, sorry, and this is the WSL feature that helps you to see what distributions are you on. If your case are a little bit, you need support. There you have. So returning to the script, then we have run the query, and we have created the container. Sorry. So what differences can helps us to control in a better way the the file systems between the previous versions, between the Windows, the Docker for Windows, the previous versions, and the one using the WSL. Um, First, you have full integration between now WSL controls the management between the file systems and between the SQL. I mean the Windows and the Linux. So you don't have to take care of that, because in the previous version you have to use um, boot to Docker or Moby Linux, which was an emulation, and it was a small Linux that controls the containers. In this particular one, with the WSL integration, you forget about that. You control directly with your WSL. WSL take charge of everything. So what do we have here is that we are seeing in the first two queries is that we are seeing the file system in the Windows environment, the path where we have our particular files for the backup files, and the second part we have the scripts. So, but both are on my desktop for the Windows folder, and the third part is the containerized environment that that Ubuntu manage on the particular mount point that Docker has for Ubuntu. Ubuntu managed between Docker, and there is the mount point. And the fourth is where how it looks, the Docker connected to the mount point. So that's the perspective, and that's what we're doing, and why we need to see it, because in our scenario Windows, right? So every time we do a change on the scripts or on the backups or everything that comes from the Windows world, we need to move it to the Docker container. So to get to there, we need to copy. For this particular scenario, we need to copy every time. Yeah, I have designed it that way. So, but the point is you move between the worlds and do it transparently. You don't have to worry about connecting. Sorry?
Carlos, we're running short on time. Can you pick your last
sure.
2 points? I'm sorry to rush you.
So I'll do restore with a real easy script, and to run the script right now to see what it does. And what happens is it validates the backup file, it runs the script, and start to refresh the database. We can do connecting the refresh of the database. We can see what it's doing while the it's coming. It's taking the backup from the Windows world, upgrading, and doing several steps after checking the backup files, doing the restore, and then verifies the restore by checking the database. And with that, we can see it. We can see the script real easy here. We do the restore. We check we do the restores, check the database, and that's it. That's my example for now. And we can inspect it from the Windows world if you like, connected to the SQL. So
could you possibly post your slide deck or some of these scripts like in a GitHub and share it in the chat?
Everything. I'll put my scripts on the chat, on also this presentation, and here we go. So we can see all the track that we did there from the perspective from the SQL Server side, but looking from the traditional way. So that's what I needed the main thing that I needed to check on that part. And for the other point that was missing, I'll put everything on my page, and I'll share my GitHub and this presentation particularly. Okay, no problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlos. We didn't mean, sorry to rush you there at the end. We just got so many speakers. Thank you so much.
No problem.